My name is Isida Byku, and I'm a structural interventional cardiologist at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. The 2025 updated European Society guidelines made a clear distinction between functional atrial mitral regurgitation and functional ventricular mitral regurgitation. And with this came an upgrade in the level of guidelines to level 1A for M-TEER, mitral transcatheter edge-to-edge repair for patients with ventricular functional mitral regurgitation. This is a big step forward in the treatment of these patients, including M-TEER as a mainstay 1A treatment similar to our current goal-directed medical therapy regimens in these patients, speaks to how successful this therapy has been in reducing heart failure hospitalizations and mortality in these patients, and quality of life improvement. And we now have 2 randomized controlled trials since the last update in the guidelines that have shown significant impact in quality of life as well as reduction of heart failure hospitalizations, which has led to the upgrade in this guideline recommendation to level 1A. With regards to functional atrial mitral regurgitation, this was also upgraded to a class 2B recommendation. And, we have the expanded studies that have looked at how these patients also seem to greatly benefit from this therapy, with more than 50% reduction in heart failure hospitalizations and significant impact increase in their quality of life questionnaires, KCCQ questionnaires, by more than 19 to 20 points. So I think overall, this represents very positive forward motion towards expanding access to mitral edge-to-edge repair therapy for patients with both ventricular and atrial functional mitral regurgitation. I think that with regards to degenerative mitral regurgitation, the mainstay of therapy still remains surgical mitral valve repair when patients are deemed to be appropriate surgical candidates and when their anatomy is feasible for repair. However, new and emerging data still shows great success rates with M-TEER in these patients who are high or prohibitive surgical risk, and the ability to have the option to treat these patients minimally invasively with transcatheter-based therapy is very positive. And I think more studies are in the making in this sphere. But as far as degenerative MR is concerned, we are still reserving treatment with transcatheter repair for patients who are higher surgical risk and who are otherwise surgically ineligible, whereas with functional MR, the mainstay of treatment is definitely transcatheter therapy. So again, the categorization of TEER is important in determining whether the primary etiologies, functional ventricular mitral regurgitation, functional atrial versus degenerative, and the factors, of course, excellent state-of-the-art imaging pre-procedurally can really help inform the decision with regards to leaflet movement, motion, coaptation gap, how much tethering there is, the LV size and dimension, the left atrial size and dimension, as well as other physiologic factors, as asked in the question about, their PA systolic pressures, their right heart catheterization hemodynamics, and how well compensated they are from a hemodynamic standpoint, pre-procedurally and volume status standpoint. Along with this is patient selection remains a very complex and dynamic issue, and engaging with the patient in shared decision-making format continues to be the mainstay of our guidance that we offer to the patients prior to discussing therapy options and making a final decision on how to counsel them appropriately regarding their best options. The heart team is at the center of the evaluation and treatment of these patients. I think it is extremely important to evaluate the treatment options for these patients with partnership from not only structural cardiology and cardiac surgery, but also our heart failure partners and our imaging partners and colleagues in determining what the best treatment option is. At times, especially if there's diagnostic uncertainty or if the treatment pathway is not immediately obvious, in my practice, I tend to see the patient and counsel the patient in the office then take that patient discussion to the multidisciplinary heart team meeting where all of my partners and colleagues have the ability to review the imaging together and make a recommendation jointly on what we all think together as the best treatment strategy for that patient. Then being able to bring that decision back to the patient in a second visit where you discuss with them, this recommendation comes from multiple experts in the field, from different areas of expertise, gives me a lot of comfort in making sure that I have provided the most comprehensive assessment of this patient's care. And also, I think it's important in getting the buy-in from all the teams involved in taking care of these patients, not just up until the point of procedure, but also in the post-procedural period. Because as we know, to maintain that procedural success, further up-titration of goal-directed medical therapy and other optimization of physiologic factors is paramount in these patients maintaining their increased quality of life scores and their reduction in heart failure hospitalization and overall procedural success. I think with every device iteration, our procedural success continues to improve. The operator learning curves are getting less steep as the devices get more user-friendly and more reliable and more predictable in their performance. And the data also reflects this because we look at, even in the expanded registries or in the COAP trials and other, as you look at the third generation versus the fourth generation systems, we are seeing that the data not only, the good results are not only maintained, but they are continuing to increase. And so I think device improvement and partnering with our industry partners in further device refinement is really important in furthering this therapy and expanding its use by making operators more comfortable learning and further advancing their skills in the therapy. My final takeaway would be that the guidelines, at least in Europe as of 2025, have separated mitral TEER, functional mitral regurgitation as both atrial and ventricular, and have upgraded their recommendations for treating these patients with MTEER to 1A for functional ventricular and 2B for functional atrial. This is based on very robust body of evidence, 2 randomized controlled trials in support of the functional ventricular mitral regurgitation and the expanded trials in support of the atrial mitral regurgitation. And in both treatment fields, we have seen significant improvement in heart failure hospitalization rates and quality of life for these patients. I think my other takeaway is, as we all try to always be and stay on the guidelines, incorporating these updated guidelines into our daily practice and early recognition and earlier treatment of these patients, I think will go a long way in helping patients feel better and live healthier and hopefully stay out of the hospital and enjoy the quality of life outside of the hospital.